Kamugisha faced sudden retrenchment at a critical stage in his life, a condition that he considers an opportunistic turning point because it led him to the seeds of gold. Like most entrepreneurs with a burning desire to solve problems in their communities, Aden was inspired by the scarcity of poultry feeds at his village that he interested himself in providing a solution, an act that eventually leads him into poultry keeping. This is his story and how you can learn from it. Coming up on Seeds of Gold.
You are going into these birds, there are determinants that will guide you. You must know your capacity, such that you are not halfway funding or growing up with these birds. The money to buy the birds must be there. The money to feed them all through the first 4 months must be there. The emphasis is both management, because it's one thing having the money and another seeing these birds grow. That's where the passion aspect must come in.
Rearing chickens is a business many have invested in for the benefits of good returns on the chickens, the marketable byproducts like the eggs, chicks and the chicken droppings. But what does it exactly take to start a poultry farm? We take a trip down to Masaka to Aden Kamugisha. Started out selling chicken feeds as a necessity, and then he developed a passion for chicken rearing and has become quite good at it.
The starting of Chitufu and what it came out to do did not start as rosy as one may look at it at this time. On the retrenchment package, I only got 685 shillings, 1,000 shillings in 1993. But that money, if you looked at it today, half of it, I bought a plot in Kimanya town, and I looked at Kimanya plot as a livelihood for me because I was not ready to go back to the village. So the 150, 100 by 50 plot was demarcated in such a way that it would do me accommodation, it would generate income for me, and I would leave a compound. So I started with the boys' quarter because I would not manage a main house. Then behind the boys' quarter, I put there provision for rearing at least maximum 300 birds. So the coming here was after trying my plot in town, and I had reached 300 birds. Though initially when I started, I had no money on me, but I had seen poultry because of my prisoners background. I was for 3 or 4 months when I became full OC. Everybody would have to come and report to the OC, and I got that chance, unlike when I was deputy. So one morning, the farm manager, who happens to be alive even by today, came to me and reported about the falling in production. And I looked at it as if she was either underlooking me or trying to undermine me. But she told me it usually happens. So when I challenged her what we could do, she told me we could go out and buy our own ingredients and mix the feeds. Good enough, production increased, costs went down. So when I was losing the government job, I had seen that poultry selling of ingredients as the option, and indeed that's what I went to do straight away.
So, you are inspired by his start out and would like to follow. Aden answers the questions of how do you start and what key aspects you should pay attention to.
Starting was not that easy because, like I told you, I had no money, but I had the urge to live. And once you have the urge to live, you must get away as long as there is a will. And in this case, I had my focus on poultry, but I didn't have the money. My immediate partner to team up with was my cousin brother, who was working in UEB then. For him, he had the money, but he was not interested in poultry. So I ended up trying with him the first 50 birds in my farming career. Later on, we graduated 250, but we got problems and some of them died. And when they died, he started braining me. Good enough, I didn't leave them to reach laying stage. We sold them at 2 months, and good enough, I got the money enough to cover what he had contributed, and decided then that I must work it alone. And I've kept that track of making it alone instead of combining effort. Poultry structures can be structured in several ways depending on resources available. You can use bricks, walls, you can use wood, like you will see some of ours, or you can just raise 3 feet above the ground level and have the mesh all around. Why some people emphasize, for instance, one instead of the other, a reason originates from your surroundings in terms of thefts, in terms of, most cases thefts. But as long as you are sure of your security, poultry houses must be housed as simply as your resources can allow. One thing initially we were told never to do, but which out of our own findings have discovered can work, is avoidance of storage structures. Storage structures have got one bigger advantage in that in structures like ours, where you have 2 stories over the ground one, you will have saved space because your neighbors may not allow to give you more of their room. So space maximization. Remember, in terms of spacing, each bird for its play, eating, exercising is entitled to 2 square feet. So, and for you to know how many birds you must buy in case you already have the room, you must get what we call area. You divide it by 2, what we call the product. Area over 2, what comes out is the number of birds you must stock. The day you are going to stock the day-old chicks, you must be in possession of their necessities. One of them is the drinking points. We call them chicken, young chicken drinkers, where the level of their height must not constrain them when they are taking the water. Similarly, the food. There are young chicks feeders. They are easily made and available. But in the first 1 day, 2 days, even egg trays can do. Even right on the brooding paper, you can try that one. But day 1, about first month, those utensils you are using must be changed, because the requirements will also have changed. Otherwise, if you remain with what you started with, the work is going to be tedious and you may not like it. We are trying to emphasize brooding paper instead of directly putting the birds on the ground, because these are chicks that have never eaten anything, that came from the egg, they are in the box and transported. So the moment you bring them out, you must protect them because they are too young and delicate. The ground is adulterated. That's why you need to put there at least some covering material. And I'm talking of the husks first, so that when you are removing what you have covered with the husks, you are not over disturbing them. That's smooth transition. You can use brooding paper, you can use old newspapers, you can use the wempe, which are made locally here, anything as long as it covers the husks so that the birds are protected from eating the husks. You are going into these birds, there are determinants that will guide you. You must know your capacity, such that you are not halfway funding or growing up with these birds. The money to buy the birds must be there. The money to feed them all through the first 4 months must be there. So the reasons as to how many you should buy, you should do your own budget first. Once you are through with your budget, the emphasis is both management, because it's one thing having the money and another seeing these birds grow. That's where the passion aspect must come in. You must have love for these birds. And the moment you can take them to maturity, I know you can go home laughing. And how do you do that? As long as you get the birds and you subject them to vaccinations. There is a regime of vaccinations, and several of them, about 8 for the first 4 months, and therefore subsequent ones as they will fall, especially Newcastle. So once you get the birds, subject them to all the vaccinations, give them medication when due, I'm sure you will find poultry business very interesting.
Still to come on Seeds of Gold.
Incidentally, beginners succeed. It's like these drivers who are driving vehicles. The moment you are teaching somebody how to drive, he may not be aware that a vehicle is, for instance, panobited. So you'll always be that extra careful.
Den produces over 1,000 trays of eggs every week from raising chicken. He has a rich supply to his village, which brings about the question of how much he invests in the birds to maintain such a stable supply.
From day 1 up to laying stage, calculate 8 kilograms per bird of the feed. As far as water is concerned, take about 2 jerrycans of water. You give them water ad drip as long as the water is over. Actually, for one to be seen managing well, the water must always be in, except if it is medicated. To make life easier for our workers, we improvised with what we call automatic drinkers. This big jerrycan, where you put about 3 jerrycans a day, therefore enough for these birds. Once you put in this tube and suck as if you are taking soda, and once you suck and the water starts coming and you put it here, these birds will access this water until the source is finished. The water must be there all the time. But the food, there is a table for you to follow. And in any case, for every bird, at the first 2 months, we are looking at 2 kilos of chick mash. Then from 2 months to 4 months, we are looking at 6 kilos for 2 months. I mean, for the 2 months, we call it grower's mash. So that's why we get the 8 kilograms per bird up to laying time. And for the period of the entire laying period, we are looking at 48 kilograms per bird. In theory, it is assumed that each bird, if well maintained, must give you over 300 eggs in its lifetime. So you can calculate even before you start how many eggs you should expect per bird. And in most cases, if you perform very well, your production should always be above 80 to 100%. But many people are always over-attracted to percentages, forgetting to look at cost of input. You may be getting a bigger percentage, but your feed cost is also equally bigger. So you don't need to be overdriven by the percentage per se.
Along his entrepreneurial journey, Aden has found raising chicken a substantial venture, as he points out that fewer startup mistakes are made as long as certain guidelines are followed.
Incidentally, beginners succeed. It's like these drivers who are driving vehicles. The moment you are teaching somebody how to drive, he may not be aware that a vehicle is, for instance, panel-beated. So you'll always be that extra careful. It's only at the second instances that we make blunders. Because if you tell him or her that the fire must be maintained at this level, she'll always be mindful of that. But the moment she's doing it the third time, the other time, she'll always say, I've always done it. So I've not, over time, had people who get bad scenarios in their initial startups with chicken. They only make blunders in the subsequent times. But like I said, as long as we emphasize good sourced chicks, good food, management aspect good, you are supposed to find chicken. Actually, personally, I've found chicken equated to nothing else for the last 26 years. And that is not to say that I have not done other businesses.
Irrespective of the possible easy kickoff, Aden, however, stresses out the common challenges in this business that you should not take for granted.
What hits us worst in the Uganda scenario is feed prices compared to eggs prices. I would only urge, say, government to emphasize the way we handle our maize exportations. I'm surprised that other countries can import as much maize as is grown in Uganda without minding about our stocks or food reserves. I would rather look at it this way, that we export maize flour. The power that we have milled this maize will be our own power and therefore income. The husks or maize bran that remains would be used in many various industries. But the balancing of the food and the sales prices is what actually makes sometimes poultry very precarious. You'll find at one time maize can go as far as 1,200 shillings. And yet it is the same maize that at one time, for instance, was at 300 shillings. So the higher the maize, the losses for the poultry farmer. The lower the cost of maize, the profit to the farmer. So it's one man's meat. And, there are many diseases that affect birds, but the biggest stabilizer is that the moment you vaccinate your birds against the known killer diseases, you are safe to the extent that even when such influxes of disease come, they are controllable. That's why we have been going further and further. Then the other thing, there must be some biosafety measures. You need not leave your farm be a haven of everything, even those who have nothing to do, to come and do it at your farm.
So, you are inspired but still need one more reason to invest in chicken rearing. Well, Aden breaks down the unique selling factor for chicken farmers, pointing out the immense opportunities this business is bound to bring you.
Opportunities in poultry farming are immense. I can only mention a few. One untapped one is that if you compare Uganda, where of recent we have not even hit a 1 million bird farmer. And yet when you globally look at farmers who maintain over 20 million per single farmer, then you should imagine if we reach the other end, or those who are there, how are they doing it? First of all, the untapped side of it is the way or the products that can come from the egg. In Uganda, for instance, the egg is meant for eating. Yet, in countries that are richly in this business, the eggs are used as raw materials in pharmaceuticals, in cosmetics. But even if you wanted to do it in Uganda, the birds themselves are not there, and therefore the factory you would put up would run for a day and it stops. But even before we are there, the employment part of it, I told you, my children are already engaging in that line instead of loitering in the streets or even moving to the Arab countries where here now it is the norm of the day. Then talk of the fertilizers, the backward and forward linkages. You will notice that our soils are becoming poorer each day. Once you are in poultry, you have already fertilizers. Some of us have even gone an extra mile and are using chicken litter for fish farming, and we have tested it and it is doing well for us instead of going for too high costly fish feeds.
For over 20 years now, Aden has practiced farming from a small scale to a fully fledged commercial entity to mixed farming, and he still continues to grow as he narrates.
The biggest opportunity we have derived and we are continuing to derive is that it is helping us to generate income, which income is pushing us into several other new ventures. And one of them we apparently are engaged in is fish farming, I've talked of, is agroforestry. We want to do as much afforestation as this country can allow because we are shorter of trees than any resource in Uganda. We are looking at our children taking over from us, and therefore us taking the backyard position. My urge is that all Ugandans need to do poultry farming because it's the easiest, in the sense that many Ugandans love having their own homes, but in the backyard of their homes there is nothing ongoing. So beginning should be from where they sleep, because they have a room or two which are either idle, and they could also work as a turning experiment for them later on to move further.
You too can make it today if you only start. Next week on Seeds of Gold. Next week on Seeds of Gold.